Good morning. Today is Thursday, March 17th, 2022 at approximately 10:05 a.m. This is a meeting of the Streets, Traffic, and Refuse Committee meeting for the Board of Aldermen. It is called to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Boyd.
Present.
Alderman Vaquero.
Present.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Present.
Alderman Bosley. Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Present.
Alderwoman Peel. Chairwoman Tyus.
Present.
5 present, you have quorum.
Okay. The next thing we'll do is approval of the minutes. I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes of Wednesday, March 9th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, if you please call the roll.
Alderman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Vaquero.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley. Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Peel. Chairwoman Tyus.
Aye.
5 aye votes.
Okay, Alderwoman Peel isn't here yet. So we'll go down to the first two things are her board bills. So we'll go down to resolutions. We're going to start just with a little conversation. I'm here. Okay, you're here now, but we're on something else. Don't ever do that again. I see you and I'll come back to you, okay? So resolution 177 is my resolution, and I had put in your box in the Google Docs some documents relating to the nuisance property. Basically what I had is the ordinance that we're going to be taking up regarding the nuisance properties. And an investigation, a joint investigation by both the Streets Committee and the Public Safety Committee, and also Resolution 199 introduced by Alderman Joseph Vaccaro, requesting the collection of revenue to suspend collection of recycling charges. I did have both ordinances put in there, which relate to the collection of the fee. There was one that was done in like 2017, I want to say, and one that was done maybe in 2011 or 12, but they're both in your Google Docs. We're going to take them up separately. In fact, I'm going to have Alderman Vaccaro be the head of a subcommittee to look into this matter. He's going to be chairing the subcommittee. I'm going to look for volunteers, but if I don't get any volunteers, I'm going to start from the bottom of the seniority list, and then we're going to create a subcommittee, and he's going to be calling the meetings because I got a lot going on with the Proposition R and the nuisance resolution and the unhoused resolution. So I got a lot going on. And so Alderman Vaccaro is agreed to be the chair of a subcommittee. So if you all are interested in serving on the subcommittee, let him know. But if not, let me tell you who the new subcommittee will be. Alderwoman Peel, Alderwoman Schweitzer, Alderwoman Boyd, and Alderman Bosley. So, and if Boyd wants to be on it, he can, but I'm just not gonna be able to do all of that. So that's why you have subcommittees. We're not going to start today unless Alderman Vaccaro has anything he wants to talk about today. But he can call a meeting at any time when he's ready to go. Do you have anything you want to talk about today, Alderman Vaccaro?
No, I will contact people, or if they email me, they want to be on the subcommittee. We'll start meeting probably this week or the very first part of next week.
Okay.
But
All right. All right, Alderwoman Peel did appear. And so we're going to start with Board Bill 179. There was a lot of questions about that. The treasurer didn't have to be here and all his staff. I just really wanted to I was shocked, and I think some of the committee members were, to find out how intermingled the residential parking districts in the 17th Ward were with the Parking Commission. And talking to other people who have these districts, that doesn't seem to be the case. I'm always concerned when one ward seems to be getting more attention than the other wards, and it could just be that they have a fantastic person running their administration in Park Central, but most of the people kind of winging it on their own. So we had more questions. And so I asked Alderwoman Peel if she would ask the Park Central people to come. And then also we talked about having the parking commissioner come. And so we do have them. Madam Clerk, would you just please read the Board Bill 179's introduction again as we go into it and start for the speakers? Because we started talking about, we had it last week, but we're going to start back up again.
Board Bill 179, introduced by Alderwoman Tina Peel, an ordinance establishing a 1000 South Taylor Avenue residential parking district and location and restriction for curb parking within the 1000 South Taylor Avenue residential parking district, and authorizing the placement of permit parking only signs and prohibiting the parking of any vehicle in the district Monday through Friday between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. that does not display the required permit, and providing for a penalty clause and an emergency clause.
Okay. Alderwoman Peel. Oh, okay. Do you have anything to say before we start speaking to the people who are arrived to speak regarding the parking district? Is there anything else you want to say to the committee members?
No, I thank you for hearing this particular board bill regarding the parking district. It's something that I fully support, understanding the parking issues that are happening in the 17th Ward, where employees are parking in the neighborhood, and residents are having a difficult time parking on the street during the day, because people have their cars parked there all day from the medical campus. And so I would just like to move forward, and again, I support this bill. So thank you.
Okay, so the first person I'd like to who would address this. Oh, I'm sorry. So we have speakers, so I have to swear all of you in. Okay, so if everybody who's going to speak, if you're not going to speak, you don't need to be sworn in. But if you're going to speak to this issue, I need you to raise your hand. And Mr. Freeman, Parking Commissioner, are you here?
I am here.
I need to see your face.
Okay.
Okay. So we got Mr. Abdullah, the treasurer, Adam Lane, Julie Burkmeyer, and you're with whom? Are you with the organization, or you're a resident, Ms. Burkmeyer?
I'm a resident.
Okay. Okay, a resident. Lenny Freeman, the parking commissioner. So some people affirm, some people swear. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do.
I do.
Okay, thank you. So we all got that done. So I want to tell you that normally there is, we have a public testimony in which people are allowed so many minutes. I don't go by that at all, because the chair can, with their privilege, let people speak. And I do let people speak because, and I did that before we even passed this board bill when I was the chair of rules. If you didn't get a chance to speak in another committee, I do like people to have input. That's just my own personal thing from many, many years of serving on this board of aldermen. I think we do a better job when we hear not only from citizens, but from other people who have input. So there will not be any moratorium or a limit on how long you can speak and answer questions. And most of you are here, except for Ms. Burkmeyer, are here because we wanted you to come here to explain how this thing works. So I want to start with Mr. Abdullah, because I think that's where, I guess once something is passed, is that where it starts in the 17th Ward, of how once we actually have a parking district, does it then hit your desk or someone in your office's desk?
Yes, ma'am. So typically what happens is the process has always been, and kind of historically, residents will do a petition process to say, hey, we want to have this parking district in the space. It's a resident-led process. What happens is once they reach that threshold for that, then what happens is that information, they typically will go to the local elected official, who's the alder person at that time. After that, when they've reached that threshold, what we will do then, just from a kind of CDC standpoint, is we'll go and we'll look at the area. We'll do various kind of counts, and we'll actually go and look and see and look at the signatures, look at what they're proposing for the district, and we'll actually look and say, okay, this is the area that they want it in. This is the streets. This is the street. This is the side of the street. This is the details for the district that they want. We will then give that information along with those signatures over to the local elected official. The local elected official then works with whoever he or she works with at the Board of Aldermen to draft the legislation for the bill.
Let me stop you for a minute. So you actually get involved even before the legislation is introduced?
Yes,
even,
ma'am. Yes,
right.
ma'am. When residents, when the residents start the process, they typically will come to us and, hey, will you work with us to make sure that this is set up? And the answer has always been yes. So initially, that goes back to before, when CDCs used to get a designated amount of block grant dollars. Some of these resident-led initiatives was really outlined with how we would serve the community. But even once that went away, because our residents had got so used to it, we just continue to work the process and continue to still work in the space with them.
Okay, so then once it's been, so it comes to the board, which I know I'm sitting on streets, we pass it, it comes out of committee, it gets passed by the full board, it's signed into law. Then how do you interact, or what happens next?
So then the next thing that we do from that point is we then say, okay, this is law. This is how this is set up. We look at the details of the bill. We look at the details, and then we begin what we call the administration process. And at that point, we go out and we begin to onboard what we call that into our system. And by that, what I mean is that we begin to say, okay, these are the number of houses that are in this space in our system, or in this space. We know we need to create hang tags for this particular district so they can be identified, because the way the process has traditionally worked was that the city of St. Louis parking division would be the enforcement. But as far as residents getting the tags or them signing up to verify, that was something that they've never done. And a big part of that is because that's just not really what they were set up to do. They would say they would enforce. So from there, what we would do is we would get the information out. We'd send information out to the community. Hey, this parking district has been established. It has been passed. And then we begin to, again, onboard them into the system. And by that, can I share my screen? Is that something that I can do?
You can.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Hold on, hold on. LTV, are you set up for him to do screen sharing now?
We're always available for screen sharing.
All right, yes. If you have something to share, go ahead.
Okay, so what we do is at that point, what we begin to do is we begin to, we have a list of districts. And in those districts, this is something that we have that kind of designates. So we just don't do it in Forest Park Southeast. We also have done this process in the Central West End. The ones that are more recent have been in Forest Park Southeast. So what we do is we designate the blocks. We get the information to say, okay, this is your area, and with that area, you will have a specific hang tag that is designated where you can park it. And we kind of meet with them and say, hey, these are the rules, just so that you know. From there, so for instance, this is in the Central West End. I'll take you to Forest Park Southeast. This one right here, they will have a specific hang tag that we will designate for them. And what we will then do is say, okay, we'll call the parking division. Hey, this is the sign, or this is the sign, or this is the hang tag that is for this area. We share that with the parking division. So when they are enforcing, they know to look for this particular tag that's there. This is this one for this area. Another area in the Central West End may have another type of tag that goes against, flat against the car. And we share that with the parking division so that when they do enforcement, they know what they are enforcing at that point. So that's something that we do. I want to stop there because the next thing then that we do, initially when this started, this was actually a paper process where people had to actually come in and you would have to then fill out an application. And I'm going to bring up the old application really quick, just so that people, would know the process. We would then set up times when parking season was open that people could come in and they would come into the office. And of course, it would be lines of people because we do about a little over 1,100 parking tags that we do throughout the year. So as you can tell, it was very cumbersome and very manual intensive with a lot of paper. So they would literally come in, they would fill out the application. Here, we would go through these different things. We'd keep all of this information here. We would ask, of course, plate number. We would ask for proof of residency, so that way we know that these are the right people living in there. Because what happens is, if they get a ticket and they do have their tag, we have to be able to really attest, because this is a legal matter, a ticket is, that yes, they verified this information. This was the information that they put in. We can say that they sat before us and they did this, and we are writing a letter kind of as the administrators in the space, under perjury. This is the correct person. And we go through all this in this process. And that used to take a very long time. Two things.
Let me stop you for a minute. I'm sorry, Mr. Abdullah. I forgot to ask you to state your name because I know you personally. So
yes, ma'am.
Would you state your name for the record, please?
Yes, ma'am. Abdul Kabab Abdullah, Executive Director of Park Central Development.
Thank you. Now go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. So what happened was we were in a situation where it became very cumbersome, and we literally almost had to hire full-time staff to do it. And this was something that we really don't get paid for. So, and when resources are tight, you don't have the block grant dollars, so you can assign that, put that as a part of it. And most tags cost somewhere, I think $1,250. And that $1,250 really goes to pay for the hang tags. It really goes to just execute the program. So this is not a money generating piece. So what we then did and said, okay, we have to find a way to make this work where it's more accessible to not just us, but people don't have to come in. And also what it will do will be give us an opportunity to make this a service that our residents could have. So what we did was we created, and we, where is this? Yeah, we created and we moved this process online to this online system. And of course, all of this is secure with the right encryption. So now a person is able to come in to the website, and I'll go back actually. So this was something we created. And what we did was we load this person, that new district will be loaded into the website, so that way they can fill out the information. So on the back end, when we have to go in and verify, the ticket, not the ticket, but the application, if we have it designated or delineated by neighborhood. So we can just simply add a new neighborhood in this. So then that way they know where to go, and we know that we get the right tag, and we can then verify. If a person is a senior or a person doesn't have access, they can still come to our office. You can also use a cell phone to do this, but they can come to the office, and they still have to go through the online system, but we will help them, we'll work with them, so that way there's still that service aspect of it. And once they go through this, they fill in all their information, they upload their information, they submit it, we then review the information, and then we will do one of two things. We will either mail that to them at their request, or they can come into the office at a designated time and pick it up. That is the way that the process works now. And that, and what we've been working on has been a process, with the treasurer's office to say, hey, this is a service that people are wanting. Is there a way from a technology standpoint, we can have something that we can have our residents to do? Because at some point, we're going to get away from this, but it's such a service to our to the community that we don't that we have to ease it off. So we've been working through that process on how that can work, to have something that doesn't matter where you're at, you can integrate and upload, integrate any area, any space in the city on this. So we kind of took our model from our website that we've done to say, okay, how do we do this? How do we work with the treasurer's office to really connect the system so that when the person applies, they can not only apply, but also parking. I'm going to stop sharing this screen. Also, the parking division can actually enforce as well. So that's the problem. At this point, there's not a connected system. So the way that this has been done is that Park Central has just taken it on itself to still provide this service to the community. And for us, it was how do we be more efficient? Otherwise, we're going to have to stop immediately, because when resources are tight, we're a staff of 5 people. So we're not a very big staff. But when resources are tight, you have to find a way to be more efficient. And out of necessity, we became more efficient with this.
Okay, so now you got hang tags, but do you not also have window stickers?
We do. We have window stickers, and we also have hang tags as well.
Okay, and you have to contract out to have those produced. Is that what happens?
Yeah, we go out. We really get a vendor who can produce these for us as cheap as possible. But that's what we do. We go out and we have a vendor that can that we go out and produce this, and they produce these. We create kind of the design, send it out, and that goes from there. So you can have depending on the area, you may have a hang tag, or you may have this sticker here where you can take it, and then right here, you can, I know that's probably backwards, but then you can stick it to the window.
Right.
And yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to just congratulate you all on a lot of work done. You all have a sophisticated organization that can do that. I guess and I do like that. I want to say that I like that you say if there are seniors or people who don't have computer access, then they can come into the office and get into the system. That's always one of my biggest complaints. I think a lot of people who deal with computers all the time do not realize how many people do not know how to use computers or don't have computers, and especially seniors, even if they have them, they may know how to do email or something like that, and then that's the limitation of them. And so when if you're from a different generation, you tend to dismiss people instead of being inclusive with them. So I want to compliment you on that. Okay, so up to this time, so you talked about, and I know you're not really paid for all of this. This is kind of just, you're continuing to do it from when you got block grant funds to do that. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's a legacy program that we just haven't found a way to fund, but our residents really like it. Because like you say, we got some seniors where now, even I'll go take the computer or the phone and sit with them, and they call me the last couple of years, hey, Mr. Abdul, yes, ma'am. And I'll come over, the staff will come over, and we'll sit with them at the house or their porch, and we'll get this stuff uploaded for them. So, and we just haven't found a way to do it, but it's worth it for the community, so.
Okay, so now, so you got all this done, then we interact with the parking commission. Is this where I need to pick up the parking commission at this point to see what they do? Are you finished with your presentation?
Yes, ma'am, I'm done, because at this point, we're done. We do, and we're done. The cars have the hang tags or the sticker, and at that point now, the enforcement is how enforcement starts.
Okay.
And at that point, that's where we stop, and that's really where the interaction has stopped in the process officially. But again, as we kind of try to do something that can be more robust for the city, we're still working and thinking through that process. But at that point, this is where we stop.
Okay, I'll take a minute to ask the committee members if anybody have any questions. I'm going to start with Alderman Boyd because I don't see Alderman Bosley here. You have any questions of Mr. Abdullah?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have a question. I want to comment and echo what you said. The program seemed to be very sophisticated, and that's a lot of work. I mean, I think I heard him say over 1,100 parking tags. I know I have 2 districts in my ward, and the struggle is actually having somebody to actually manage the district. I actually wish that this was something that would go through the treasurer's office, since they are responsible for
Exactly.
parking and parking enforcement.
Exactly.
Because, you know, as Abdullah said, you know, when they were getting block grant money, you can shift it to the neighborhood organization and they can kind of help facilitate. But when you're asking for a block where a bunch of senior citizens live on, they don't want that task of issuing stuff and administrative headache and people complaining to them about, you know, the issues, because that's the first person they're probably going to go to when people are not adhering to the parking regulations. So, and it's something that actually came up some years ago. At that time, I don't think the parking, the treasurer's office was interested in really doing that. I think it might even be very cumbersome upon them. You know, I don't know, but I just really think that we should have a standardized program across the whole city, because everybody is not fortunate to have a Park Central that does a phenomenal job with the community. So those are just my comments, Madam Chair. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Alderman Vaccaro. You're muted. We can't hear you. There you go.
I'm on. I got there now. No, no other. I agree with. But other than that, no questions.
We didn't hear you. Can you repeat what you said? Because you cut off.
He was frozen.
Okay.
Am I frozen?
Now you're not.
Can you hear it? Okay. No, I agree with you and Alderman Boyd. It'd be nice if the treasurer did it. I have no other comment.
All right. Thank you. Alderwoman Boyd.
I just want to kind of piggyback what Alderman Boyd said, but also it shows the importance of these CDCs that's in these communities that can help the residents. And so that's why I feel they're critical. The need is critical. Abdul has showed they stepped up where there was a need for those residents. And so this organization has went over and beyond to try to make sure residents are serviced. And so as we as older people know, we can't always do all and be all. And so that's the piece that's needed in these communities. So I applaud you for the work that you all are doing. And you have talked about how to build our CDCs to make sure that they can do that work to help some of the load on the elected officials in those areas. So thank you.
Okay. Alderwoman Schweitzer.
No questions, thank you.
Okay, I know Alderwoman Peel doesn't have any. I see Alderwoman Rice is here. Do you have any questions, Alderwoman Rice?
No, thank you. Just here to listen.
Okay, Alderwoman Ingracia.
No questions. Thanks.
All right. Okay. And so now we're going to go to they always go to the elected official first. Treasurer Lane, if you want to speak, because Alderman Boyd said what I'm getting to, which is that I don't like a program that I don't want to use the word elitist, because there was a lot of elbow grease put in by Park Central, but you only have to have a certain amount of people can access that. That makes me very uncomfortable. So I'm headed toward why we don't have this done under the treasurer's office, or we have a contract with Park Central to implement it for the whole city. So if you could answer that question, or Mr. Freeman or whatever.
I sure can.
Okay.
So thank you everyone for the opportunity to present, and I will state my name. So I am Adam Lane, St. Louis City Treasurer. So we have had many conversations with Abdul, and they've gone well. I love the staff that he has over there at Park Central. We've been talking about how this thing started, and I think that's the important place to start. I think that what you're saying, Alderwoman Tyson, correct me if I'm wrong, is you don't like where it is now, where not everyone has access to it. But as Abdul clearly stated about how this started, this was an ask of their residents through this block grant funding.
And I want to stop you. I was here when it started, just like I was here. I didn't like when we did a community improvement district, because I knew it would become elitist to the people who can do it. So I don't like services, not that the people didn't work hard to have it. It's just that it's certain people that don't have that kind of people that have that skills in their wards. It's nothing that they did wrong. That's what you're supposed to do. But I knew it would get here, and it's right where I've been on street since 1991. So when they started, I was here. And so it's not anything that they did wrong. I just don't like that we can't offer that same kind of service to everyone. I applaud Mr. Abdullah, but I want to know how the city can get in it, or if we can't do it, how we can do a contract, because I think Mr. Abdullah should get paid for what he does, or his organization. Why we couldn't do a contract so that everybody would have that same kind of service, okay?
Okay.
So,
and
okay.
I'll clarify, I also didn't think that Park Central did anything wrong. I'm just saying what started. Oftentimes things started as pilots, they continue. Abdul let us know that funding actually, and he let this group know that funding actually ran out as well. So they are on the hook and they're making it work. So yeah, so I'm not saying anyone did anything wrong, but I often say, we have to also look at where we are versus where we came from. As Abdul said, we enforce parking. So the one piece that wasn't talked about, and no fault to you, Abdul, but what our PEOs look at are the signage. So the additional step is that the signs go up. So we look at the signs that our PEOs look at the signs that are on the street. And then like Abdul said, when we have the information about the tags of the stickers, where our PEOs are able to see whether or not that person is in violation of that sign. And that sign would be residential permit parking. So that is how we enforce, and that's how we're intertwined. So they send that information over to us. And then as our POs are out on the street, we enforce that way. We have been in conversations talking about how this is a burden that is alleviated from Park Central's, especially since there is not that block grant funding anymore, in a way that the Treasurer's Office can assume that. Those conversations started some years ago, and of course we had a pandemic and our revenues went down because, as Abdul said, there are costs involved with this. Any service, they do have costs, and of course we don't want to unnecessarily or unfairly shift those costs onto the people. But we're looking at, if we're thinking about the population that Park Central works with, he said over 1,100 tags, expanding that city. And just with that alone, there are costs involved with printing of those tags, disseminating those tags, taking an application, having someone to review 1,100 plus. Well, if 1,100 have it, then there are probably a lot more applications for it. Making sure that we issue that, and costs for mails those costs are astronomical. And we've already looked into what this would cost at a systems, from a systems standpoint and an IT standpoint. And just for the technology alone, we'd be looking at an additional $20,000 plus expenditure to make sure that we have the capability to do that. And when we take that citywide, we're talking about more parking districts, more parking tags. So of course, those costs do increase. And I say that not to say that it's not something we don't want to do. So you can ask Abdul, we are invested, and this is something that we think makes sense to be under parking's purview to make sure everything is aligned. Of course, those requests would still be generated by the citizens and by the people, and they would go to their alderperson to say this is what they want, or their neighborhood association say this is what they want. But it's definitely not something that we're opposed to. It's just, if we're going to go citywide with this, I just think there needs to be a concerted effort, and maybe that's work that's done in Streets Committee in conjunction with the Treasurer's Office, whether it's done in our Parking Commission meetings, but figuring out like what this looks like, what is going to be the process, and how we keep it as aligned as possible, and then figuring out what is going to be the cost to the city for this, and what makes sense from a cost standpoint moving forward.
Okay. You talked about the signs goes up. So who puts the signs up? Is that the parking division?
Streets. We don't put up any signs. The only thing we put up are the posts and the pay station. So we enforce signage, but we don't put up signage.
So Streets puts them up. You don't pay for them or anything, right?
No.
Okay. Mr. Abdullah, does your organization pay for the signage that goes up?
No, ma'am, we don't. Typically in the past, we've never, that's not something that's in our purview. In the past, it may something that possibly the neighborhood stabilization officer or the alderperson would work with streets. And whatever that sauce is, I'm not sure if that's ward capital that they pay for it with. I'm not sure if it's out of the streets budget. That I'm not sure.
And do you design the signage that goes up?
No, ma'am, we don't.
Okay, so you don't have anything to do with the signage, but there is signage that says this is permitted parking for whatever parking district it is.
Yes, ma'am. It's a sign that go up. This is permitted parking. It'll say residential from this time to this time. And it's clearly designated and delineated what that area is supposed to be for.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Boyd, I see you have a question.
Yeah, Treasurer Lane, being an enterprise fund, you have the opportunity to raise rates almost at will, correct?
Correct, with certain approvals.
Right, and approval is based on the parking commission, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so prior to the pandemic, the parking fund was well funded, a lot of excess revenue every year prior to the pandemic. And I know it probably took a couple, 2 or 3 years to get back to the same level where there was a lot of excess revenue, but aldermen oftentimes put mandates on departments that are unfunded. And I know that's not necessarily fair, but for the greater good of our citizens, it's a needed service. And so wouldn't you think it would be practical or very likely that you could find the funds, whether it was $50,000 a year to service this citywide, and if you had to raise the rates another nickel per hour, whatever it was, just to cover those costs, that's highly possible?
Sounds very possible, Alderman Boyd, and thank you for that question and suggestion. We're not opposed to that. Again, this is something that we haven't sought to do. So it wasn't something like, let's create these residential parking districts all across the city and see how much that costs us. So I actually don't know what that full cost and capacity would be. But as I was saying, in our talks with Park Central, we are figuring out, and we have a population and a program that has been working for some time. So we're going through the work to see, all right, you all are giving out 1,000 plus permits. This is what it's costing you on the infrastructure side, on the time side. And if we were to take it, and like I said, we had that 20,000 number to know what the tech need would be, but in terms of what the schedule would look like throughout the year and what work would need to happen, we could say, or we could get a more solid cost estimate for one district or a couple of districts that Park Central works with, and then be able to extrapolate that over the whole city. And that would give us information from a cost standpoint. Now, of course, that would be on a need basis. And we also have to determine, like, what are the needs? Like, where do people want these districts? Because we don't just want to set them up and people don't want them, or people think that they're a nuisance. So we want to be community responsive. And then the last piece outside of cost is going to be how do they get set up? And I think that's less of an us aspect. So we can be the structure that houses it, enforces it, and makes sure that it runs smoothly. But in terms of what is going to be the process for a neighborhood to say, this is what we want, and to get that approved, that's still yet to be determined, and making sure that that happens in an equitable and fair way.
Sure. And what I heard Abdul say, they have a process in place that works for them. I don't think we would end up putting districts in where they're going to be a nuisance for sure, because it's pretty much community led. It's something that the alderman is not aware of until citizens complain about it and it becomes a viable solution. So I don't think we ever have to worry about it being a nuisance. The only nuisance is people keep violating it. That's the big nuisance of the parking districts. But are you willing to take that on and explore how much it would cost in your office for a citywide program? And I know you cannot imagine how many new parking districts may pop up, but I do know Alderman Bozzi I think he did his whole ward as a parking district, something like that, which is massive. But would you be willing to take that on?
Absolutely. And yeah, and like I was saying, and be it the will of the people. So that's what we're here for. So be it the will of the people, that's something that we're willing to take on. And yeah, we can't imagine how many districts might pop up, but we could also just do it by population. So again, if we know what a cost would look like for 1,100, then we can say no matter how many districts there are, we could say, well, we know what it would look like to serve 100,000 residents, no matter where or how spread apart those districts would be. And so we could go by number of permits and cost as opposed to trying to figure out how many districts would be.
Great idea. Thank you. No further questions, Madam Chair.
Okay, Alderman Vaccaro, any questions of the treasurer?
No, no questions. Thank you.
Okay. Alderwoman Boyd, any questions? I see you, Alderwoman Evans, but my committee always goes first. Alderwoman Boyd, any questions?
No, I just would be real interested on how we can make this work for a win-win for the residents and for, and I think Park Central kind of laid the groundwork for us. And so I just hope the treasurer's office works real close with them to kind of help guide through this whole process. That's all. Thanks, Alderwoman.
Okay. Alderwoman Schweitzer.
No questions, thank you.
Okay. Alderwoman Evans.
Did you miss Peel already? Okay.
She probably doesn't have questions of her own people. Okay.
Okay. All right.
And if she does, she can put her hand up and I'll let her ask questions.
I realized that after I mentioned her name. Good morning, Madam Chair.
Good morning.
And board members and Mr. Abdullah. I may have missed this because I had other priorities. I was late getting on, but I wanted to know, what do the visitors do when they come to visit residents so that they don't get tickets?
Yes, ma'am. So a couple of things that we do, every home gets a certain number of guest passes that they can also register with them. So one of the things we do with every guest, with every tag, there is a number on that tag. So that number is always tied back to a particular residence or address. I know you can't put that up. So what happens is when we're enforcing two things, when there's an enforcement on this, and let's say someone gets a ticket, this number will also be, this number would also have to be with the tag. And we have to also verify that, hey, this number is attached to that card, to that particular home. So what happens is they will get a certain number of guest passes that they are responsible for administering themselves, right? So they have to take back those tags and they have to make sure that they manage that themselves. If they do lose a tag in the system, you can get a replacement, but we will go and we will void this number out and put that new tag attached to it. So that way we know that this is the correct tag. So you get a certain number of tags per home, and then they manage that themselves.
Thank you.
Okay, Alderwoman Peel. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to ignore you, but I thought you wouldn't have any questions. So go ahead.
Thank you, Chairwoman Tyus. I just wanted to make a comment regarding having the Treasurer's Office manage these parking districts. I do believe that it should be centralized. It will be helpful for the whole city so that we could all be on one page. So I just wanted to make the comment in terms of support of having the Treasurer's Office managing the whole process.
Okay, Alderwoman Evans, if you're finished, could you lower your hand? Thank you. Alderwoman Rice.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I had a question. What is the fee per year that residents pay for the parking passes?
So the fee is $12.50 for the tag, and that's what they pay.
Okay, and are there any programs for folks who are fixed income or that may have a hard, I know $12 is not a lot, but if somebody's got a set amount of money that's coming in the door every month, are there any programs for folks who are unable to pay?
Well, Park Central, so one of the things, we know our seniors, we know our residents that are in the space. So if someone cannot pay, we will simply pay it ourselves for them.
Okay.
And we will put money and literally pay that. And that's
Excuse me, somebody has a radio or something in the background that we can hear. So mute. Please.
You might be getting a little bit of, my husband and I share a very small space here, and we're
Okay.
both on calls. That's why I'm trying to talk on my headphones.
All right.
So we literally, we will pay for this. We will pay for a senior if they don't have a tag. We literally will pay for that senior. And typically that's never the case. We've only had it a couple of times that's happened, or we may have a situation where we have one senior that lives on Wichita, and we had to give her an extra tag, and because she has her children and 3 caregivers who come throughout checking on them. So you get those extenuating circumstances where someone does need an extra tag because she's a senior, they come in there, and we will pay for it ourselves for them.
Sure. Okay. I appreciate that. I have residents that have asked about, parking districts near, say, the botanical gardens or along areas that deal with an influx of visitors for tourist events, that type of thing, or around Tower Grove Park. And I have struggled in my years here trying to balance the needs of the residents and the needs of the businesses, and trying to make sure that I'm not potentially pricing anyone out of the space. Also, we're particularly in an area that is dealing with increased taxes, and folks are struggling to stay in their homes. Every little piece of that is something that is every little fee is a consideration as well. And so I guess I am interested in also in the centralization of this, but I have concerns about what that would look like, because you have relationships with your community, and I think that's great as a neighbor, as a development corporation. These are folks that you're very much in touch with, and so I would hope that if we do move towards a more centralized system, that relationship piece is able to somehow be understood. I've parked in other cities, or had to get parking permits for other cities when I visited friends there, and it's a tedious process. And I think the more we can give our constituents the understanding of what it would actually mean to have a parking district before we implement more of them, I guess it's just a caution. And I do also really like that you work off a petition basis. I think that's really important also, that it's the residents that are petitioning for it. And that's what I've always told my residents, is that if you are truly interested in this, then this has to be a ground up effort. It's not something that I'm going to impose in, because that's a lot for the government to ask for another, the expense and the paperwork and all of that to keep this up. So thank you so much for answering questions. Appreciate it.
Okay, anybody, let's see who else was. Alderman Gunther, you have any questions?
Just listening. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. I have a question, Mr. Abdullah. Is there a difference between property? So say I'm a property owner and I rent my property out. Do I have a right to park in that district if I'm coming to do business with my tenants? And do I get a parking? Do I have to apply for a parking permit or tag, or has that issue come up?
So it doesn't come up often. It does sometimes, but what happens is that we have a couple different pieces. We have our rental, and you also have the actual property owners. So let's just take where in the ward, we have, well, just in the Grove, we have about 300 units of affordable housing that's in this section right in the core on the north side. Not all the streets are parking districts, most of them are. So on the rental side, they have, there's some parking that they may have at their rental facility, but on the personal property, on the homeowners, they are not necessarily, you're entitled to it if you have an address there. And those are the people who are entitled to it and to that. So it truly is the residents and someone being there. So if you're a property owner and your address is there, then that's the way that we work it. We do have some residents, some owners of the property. You have two choices. And I think one of the things, because we're in relationship with them, that they can either, as a part of their rental agreement, come in and get the tags for each unit that they're designated and they're responsible for, but you only get a certain number, that's been designated for your home or for your property.
So if you have a 6 family, you would get so many for each of the 6 families. You got a 4 family, right?
Yes, ma'am. And each one is designated for that. So some property owners, because we really don't care if there's an address that's there and it's a rental piece. You can come in and get your tags, but that's what you're getting for that. If there's an extenuating circumstance for a homeowner, we get it, because sometimes you do have those situations that come up, but you get a certain number for your units, and that's what we stick to across the board.
Okay, so like I'm a property owner, and I have some property that have off-street parking and some that does not. Okay, so no problem with them off-street parking, but let's just say I'm in a place and I have on-street parking and I need to come and talk to my tenants or whatever, which you want your property owners to be over at their property as much as possible. It keeps down a lot of problems. So is there a provision for me if I come in to have some kind of tag tied to that building as a property owner? Or could that be another addition, or that could make?
It could be another addition. I think that you sign it based on the need and the need in that space. So if you want to add it, that's the beauty of it. You can't make perfect the enemy of good, and every neighborhood is going to be very different, and each parking district is going to be very different. So you can put that provision in if that's what it says, but we typically try to follow the petition and try to follow what it is. So if that needs to be amended, then that's something that needs to be amended, by the residents or the people that signed that petition. If we have to administratively do something, so for instance, we did give an additional tag to the senior on Wichita, because she has 3 caregivers that are making sure that she stays in her home. Those are administrative exceptions that, I'll take and I'll stand on. But for the most part, with the exception of things such as quality of life issues like that, that's what it is. It's try to follow it to the T. And if the people want to do something different, then just like they did the petition process to start it, then they can also take that same process to abolish it. And that's typically how I try to operate that.
Okay, and how do you deal with disabled parking within the district? So if you got a disabled parking permit, say seniors, how do you deal with that? Say if that's in the middle of, you put it as a special parking district, but in front of somebody's house, because I have a street 50 through the 5200 block of Lotus. You can't park on that street because it's all seniors. So every other house or every house is all disabled parking.
That I don't know. We may have a few handicap or disabled signs where you can't park, but from my recollection, that's not something, because I've seen that there's some blocks, Chairwoman, I've seen that everyone has, parkings for seniors or people who are disabled. We typically don't have that in the space, so it hasn't been a big issue we've had to come up with. But at the end of the day, you can have a residential parking piece, right? It's residential parking, but if there's a handicap space and you park in a handicap space or disabled space, then you're going to be ticketed by enforcement if you don't have the proper credentials.
So handicap or disabled parking overrides the parking district is what I'm saying, right?
Oh, okay. Now that's not, that's not an enforcement piece. That's an enforcement piece.
I'll talk to them, but I just wanted to know what from your viewpoint. I know it is, but I'm just trying to see if you all had dealt with that anyway, because I think it does anyway.
Yeah, not on a grand scale. We haven't, but I would think that handicap or disabled parking, when that is in that space, then that should be something that's allowed to make it that accessible. And those are quality of life issues for people.
Okay.
So
Now, you said something about you could give permits or stickers out several ways. You could issue it to the building. So many, say if I got a 4-family, let's just say 2 per 4-family, and so it would be 8 or whatever it is.
yes, ma'am.
Is that addressed in the petition, or is that addressed as you administer? How do you decide how that works?
So that's just addressed as we're administered, because each address is designated as a certain, you get a certain amount of tags. So, and particularly, we really try to work with that way, because a lot of times, believe it or not, there's always a lot of turnover in the rental here. So, and you can have someone that may have lived there last year, and they try to come in again with it. So, so we have worked it both ways, where as long as it's that address, you can either work with the building owner, who technically, if there's no lease on it, when he's leasing it out, you know, that's his property, those are his addresses, so he'll deal with it. Or if I'm a long-term renter in the space, then I typically will do it myself. But that's something we just do in the administration.
So it's on a case-by-case analysis. Is that what happens?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so, but if you had a difference of agreement with the landlord versus the renter, if the landlord says, no, I want to have it to each unit, but the renter says, no, I would rather have it myself, how is that resolved?
The property owner, because that's the person that owns the property.
Okay, all right. All right, and thank you, Treasurer Lane. So is it, what I think, is it true that if there's a handicap or disabled parking space in the middle of a parking district, does that override the parking district in that the person gets to park there?
So it depends. So you would think that it does, and it would normally, but again, and this would be why a very comprehensive ordinance and or bill or plan or approach to citywide parking districts would be important. Usually parking districts are set up because they're very near to a bunch of businesses, and then those businesses have that overflow parking that goes into residents, and they can't park where they need to park. So if when I say it depends, if there are handicap spaces for those businesses that are separate from that parking district, then the handicap parking would override the district. But usually when there are handicap spaces set up in districts, they're for specific residents. So essentially they don't conflict. Those handicap spaces are not necessarily for anyone who's handicapped to park there, but for that particular resident. So in a way, it actually is handicap parking and residential permit parking in one.
Right. But what I'm saying, I wasn't really anticipating for the businesses having handicap. So you brought up a whole nother thread. What I was saying, if I'm handicapped and I already have a handicap sticker, then I don't need to apply for any kind of tag or anything, because I'm already able to park right in front of my house in that space because I have a different, more predominant sticker.
Exactly. You already have a spot, so you would not need, you wouldn't need both.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Now, the only time you would need a resident, let's say you would need both, is if you're parking anywhere in that district that's not your designated spot.
Right. But as I understand it, the handicap parking is only for the person who's at that address anyway. It's not for another person from outside could not come and park in the handicap spot.
Exactly.
Okay. Alderwoman Peel, you had your hand up. Did the question get answered?
Yeah, the question got answered, but I have another question. So if you're an individual who is handicapped, you cannot park in any handicapped space on a resident. I didn't know that. So that's new. I thought that, okay.
No, because they're residents.
So even if you put your hang tag up as
I can
handicap.
I can clarify. So and that's why I led with a business. So if I'm parking in front of, Chick-fil-A and they have handicap spaces, that's to make it more accessible. Usually someone who's requesting a handicap space in front of their residence or in a more residential district, it is a handicap spot, but it's more for them. So if I'm parking around there and I'm visiting someone and I am handicapped, it's not really a public open handicap spot. It's based on the person. It's just designated as a handicap space.
But if Chick-fil-A does one, it is for anybody who has a parking handicap permit.
Exactly. And that's why I was saying usually there isn't too much of an overlap, just depending on how close a residential district is to a business district. So if there are homes on one side and businesses on another side, and you see a handicap space and it also is metered or permit parking, that's where we get more gray area and where we have to get into the details about what takes precedence and what doesn't.
Well, I can tell you on Lotus, with number of handicaps parking, you better not, Miss Jones better not park in Mrs. Smith's parking space. I don't care if they both do have handicap. Everybody knows this is mine. It's like going to church. And if you sit in Mrs. Jones' spot at AME Church, Miss Jones will stand right over you and look at you till you get up and move. So that's how handicap parking is in the city of St. Louis. Or if it snows, and I used to live in South St. Louis, and we would dig out because then I didn't have a garage, and then you put that chair there and nobody else is supposed to park in that spot where you put that chair or you put that, whatever you put there to mark, that was yours. So it's very competitive. Alderwoman Evans.
Yes, I just wanted to get a better understanding. When there's a handicap parking space allotted on a residential area, don't those individuals pay for that parking spot?
In a residential district, yes. And so that's why it answers the question, would they additionally need a permit? No, because they already have one for a designated space that they already have. So usually with the permit parking, it's not a designated space, but those with disabilities will ask for a designated space or a handicap space that's right in front of their residence so that they don't have additional issues with accessibility. Whereas, for a general permit, my house might be a permit, a residential permit district, and it might be the whole street, both sides of the street. It doesn't necessarily guarantee that I can park right in front of my house, but it allows me to park in that area without being ticketed or towed.
May I ask how much does a resident have to pay if they wanted a special handicap spot in front of their house?
I actually have no idea.
So that goes through, we have an office when we come through the basement, that office right there, when you first walk through the door, Alderwoman Evans, they handle that. Okay, right as soon as you walk in, when we come from our parking on the lot, you walk in, they handle that. You actually have to get a doctor's statement saying that you are handicapped, and they send it through there, and they can tell you what the fees are. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Alderwoman Tyus.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay. I guess Treasurer Lane, we want to now go into I was surprised to find out about the signage going up, and that's even a different section. Do you want to answer questions about how we issue violations, or do you want Mr. Freeman to answer that?
I can answer those.
Oh, okay. So then can you tell us about, so now we have everything up and going. Their signs are up by the street department. We're using tags. We're using stickers or whatever. So what happens then as far as the enforcement part of parking?
So our parking enforcement officers have their different beats. So they know what areas of the city that they're in, whether it be for the meters or residential parking districts or street cleaning. So they will see the sign, and we always look for, our POs always look for the signs. And if there is a vehicle that is in violation of that sign, we will issue a ticket to that car.
Okay. And what is the fee for the ticket?
Depends on the violation. So we have the different violation structures. I can if you want the specific numbers, I can ask Lenny to, he knows the numbers more on hand than I do.
Okay, so do you or Lenny, either one or both of you can go over what are the violations of what approximately, you don't even have to have exact fee.
Okay, so for a expired meter, that's $20. For contrary to sign, depending on what that sign is. So yellow curb violation, I believe.
So
those
this is within, I'm sorry, so this is, I'm talking about within the parking district itself. You also have expired meters within the parking
So
district?
you just want to know the fee structure for
Yes.
parking districts?
Yes.
Yeah, so our contrary to sign violation is $30, I believe.
So it's contrary to sign violation.
Mhm.
And is that the only violation you would have?
Yep, because again, it's based on the sign. So we look at the sign, it's a parking district or permit parking. We see if they have a permit. If they don't, they're in violation of the sign. And so that fee is assessed accordingly.
Okay, so then is there a way, I know with normal parking tickets, there's an appeal process. Is there an appeal process?
Yep, so with all of our tickets, any resident or anyone who gets a ticket has the ability to dispute it.
And is all that on the ticket itself?
Yes, yep.
So you have already, I guess, adapted somewhat in the ticketing process to the special parking districts, right?
Yeah, you could say that. So on-street parking, whether it's in a residential district or not, we have a process for that.
Okay.
So we see it less as, of course, the residents and, for example, Park Central or the alderperson there would see it as residential parking. For us, it's a street/sign violation. So that's all together for us. So it doesn't change what we do from that standpoint.
Okay, do the fees double if they don't pay at a certain time like the regular parking tickets?
Yes, they follow the same fee schedule.
Is there anything different with these except for that is just contrary to sign? Is there anything different in how you administer the parking ticket other than that is just contrary to sign?
No, nothing different at all.
And would it ultimately, if people don't pay, would it ultimately end in a boot?
It would.
Could it?
No booting or towed, just because that's the process for all tickets.
Has there ever been that, to your knowledge, any kind of mistake where somebody actually does have a permit or something and there's a mistake? And is there a process if they come in and say, hey, this is, and I guess this is the appeal process. Hey, I do actually have this. Or what if they didn't have it displayed, but they actually have it? Is there a way to rectify that?
Absolutely. Our parking enforcement officers are human, so mistakes happen all the time. And we have people who come in and they dispute and say, here's my ticket. I've had it. I have the paperwork to show that I've had it this time, and we can remove that. We've also had people who have said, I didn't have it displayed at the time, but they do have it. And they just let us know. But we've had people who still pay the ticket because they say it was on me, it wasn't displayed, but just want to let you know that I do have it.
Okay, so it's required to be displayed though, right?
It is, or
So
else we wouldn't be able to enforce it.
Is there a certain place where it's supposed to be displayed, like front window, back window, or anything like that? Because I know you issued Board of Alderman members a hanging card, but my vehicle doesn't let it hang. So I always just put mine right there under where it would be the review mirror. So is there a place that's required in each of the districts where it's supposed to be displayed?
Not necessarily. We know that, all cars are different, but our parking enforcement officers do a great job. They will circle the car multiple times, look and see to make sure that they're not missing anything.
Okay. Any committee?
And we also take a picture. We post those pictures when we do have violations. So we'll take a picture of the front of the car, back of the car to show that it was not displayed or we didn't see it. And then sometimes we've had a case where maybe it's on the dash and the person didn't see it, it's in the corner. I mean, they are able to point it out in the picture and they're able to dispute that and everything goes fine.
Okay. Before Alderwoman Evans asks a question, any committee members have any further questions? Okay, Alderwoman Evans.
Yes, I had to dispute a ticket once, and that process was troublesome. I put it that way, trying to dispute your ticket that you get. And what I had to do, I had to go and take pictures of where I had parked. The problem was there was a yellow striping along the curb. But before the yellow striping, there was a meter there, which I had put money in the meter. And when I pulled in to the meter, they still gave me a ticket. And that was because of some kind of yellow striping. It was almost like, if you're going to prohibit parking here, you shouldn't have a meter there. And that was what I had to argue. The dispute of that. I had to take pictures. I had to take pictures of my car parked there and show them where the line was. And so either way, I eventually got it thrown out. But my thing was, you know, that was a encumbersome process that I had to go through just to prove that I was legal. I had no intentions of not paying to park. And what I believe they did, they came back and they whitewashed that yellow line that was there.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to share that.
Okay. We don't get those often. What it sounds like, and again, when I talk about just having a more, and the streets department and my department are having more conversations about how we stay in line, but we don't do curb painting. So it could have been a situation where the folks in streets were supposed to be painting a curb and they painted it, but didn't, and they had their assignment, but didn't know that there was a meter there, or didn't care, or weren't, or were just following what they were supposed to do. And that paint went over past the metered zone. And our PEOs did the best that they could, but I'm glad you were able to get it resolved. I'm sorry about the hassle that it took though.
Alderwoman, any more questions? Alderwoman Evans, any more? Put your hand down, please. All right. Okay, let's see. Who's here? Alderwoman Ingrassia, any questions?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Everybody else is gone. Okay, anybody else have any other questions? Okay, any more testimony from the treasurer's office? Because then I'm going to go to Mrs. Burke-Mayer. Okay, and Miss, I'm sure I'm butchering your name, Julie. So if you would say your name so I can say it correctly, please.
Birkenmeyer.
Birkenmeyer. Okay, Mrs. Birkenmeyer. And you are a resident of the 17th Ward?
I am.
Okay, and you're within the parking district?
Yes.
Okay, and you came to testify in support of this board bill?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much for this time. I just want to mention very briefly, I was the person who initiated the petition to get the parking district. I've lived in my house for about 28 years and watched as the streets around us have become parking districts. The residents on my street, which include renters and homeowners, have resisted putting a parking district in for a long time. But after the pandemic, since WashU sent all their folks home for the pandemic, it really wasn't an issue for about 2 years. You could see tumbleweeds on our street for a couple of years because there was nobody parking on it. When the pandemic, when vaccinations came out and people began going back to work, somehow the issue got a lot worse, where residents, including myself that work from home and other residents on the street, continually complain to each other that the street is completely full by, I would say, 8:15 a.m. And if you leave your house during the day and you come back, you cannot park. One of the reasons it's also gotten pretty bad is that the prior alderman, Joe Rody, put a parking district in across the street on Taylor, right in front of a business called Tecanista, which didn't appear on the map that you saw earlier, but is, I believe, the district of 1040 South Taylor. And that district was put in without any resident petition and no resident notice. The signs went up one day. So half the block on the far side is restricted parking for I guess the patrons of Tecanista, the artists. So the combination of that parking district going across the street, the end of the pandemic, the expansion of WashU campus with more and more employees, and the other blocks around us all becoming parking district over the past few years have led to a situation where we are often unable to park within blocks of our house. And on street cleaning days, it's impossible. And I will admit to parking illegally on many street parking days because there's nowhere to park. So I really appreciate Alderman Peel taking this up for us. And I would be happy to answer any questions.
First one, and the attorney in me says, never, ever, 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 ever admit to doing anything illegal. Okay, don't do that again. Okay, that's the first thing. I was a defense attorney. You did not know it was illegal. You just accidentally parked there, and then you found out later. Okay.
Okay.
All righty. So you just told me something that's interesting, and that is that we have business and residential parking districts. I always thought of these things as a defense for residents that have lived near successful businesses. So that is interesting. Mr. Abdullah, I want to ask this question. So does Park Central also, are they involved with the business parking districts?
So since I've been here, we do the tags for them. I have not been a part of establishing any business districts. There is one on the residential on Shoto. One side of the street has some residential, has business parking, has a business district that's there. And then the other one is on 1100 South Taylor, which is across the street, which those are there as well. And I think those are the two, but I've never been involved with any of the districts, business districts being established.
Okay. Mr. Lane, do you know, is there a difference in the business district parking and residential parking districts?
Again, not from our standpoint, since we don't establish them, we just enforce. So again, meters and then contrary to signs. So we strictly have taken, our stance has always been, we will enforce the signage. So that might be more of a streets department.
It is. That's troubling to me. Okay, that you would do that on a residential street, but I'm not surprised. I'm going to just say the prior alderman would have done something like that. So I am not surprised, but I am also not pleased to hear that. That's something that can be revisited. All legislation can be revoked. I want you to know that, Alderwoman Peel, in case you don't know that. You don't have to go along with bad legislation. That's why we change legislation all the time. And did you, oh, I'm sorry, Miss, is it Birkmeyer?
Birkenmeyer.
Birkenmeyer. So did you actually walk the petition yourself?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And you say, so the other district, is it across the street from you, the business district?
It's on the far side of the street and down half a block. It's on the same block.
So that makes it more difficult for the residents because now it took away part of the parking spaces. Is that what happened?
Exactly. So
you didn't know anything about it? There was no notice given to you?
No.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, that's okay. There was typically in the past, my understanding is that all the parking districts had been the result of resident petition. So this was the first one I was aware of that went up with no petition and no notice to residents.
And how long ago did that happen?
It was before the pandemic. So could it be 3 years ago, maybe? And
2 to 3 years ago?
Yeah, but again, during the pandemic, this was really not an issue because WashU had everybody working from home. So it was really after the vaccination came out about a year ago and people came back to work. And the parking, my understanding is the parking costs at WashU are very high. And so a lot of people park in Forest Park and they park in our neighborhood because they can park for free and then they walk to work. So I don't begrudge them any of that. I mean, that's something I would probably do if I worked there and lived elsewhere too. But the problem just, it creates a problem, which the parking district will hopefully resolve.
So, and Alderwoman Tyus, just to give you some context, I pulled up on a Google map. I'm going to share where that particular district is.
I appreciate it.
It's right here. This is, of course, a parking district, and and this area here is the district that she's referring to in this space. So it's in this space, I think it goes from here to here. So it's this space right here. But
That is,
but
is that a commercial parking district that you're saying right there?
That I'm not, I think it's a business or a commercial district, or it's just an extended commercial district. I'll pull up, give me 1 second.
Okay.
Right here. So this is the space. Let me see if I can zoom into the map there. Resident permit parking only.
Okay,
so
so that's,
on this side. So it is, from what I can tell from the sign, a resident parking district that's in this space. So I'm not sure right now. I know this is Tech Artista. This is artists, like an artist space in here. But
it says resident, not business.
That's correct. Resident, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Julie, is there some place near here that would be the commercial parking district? Did you look at that map?
Are you asking where our district would be located?
And where the business district is compared to your district?
Oh, you mean the Grove Business District?
Yes, he didn't have, he said he pulled it up. Can you pull up their business district and show me? So your proposed residential district is not there, right? Is that right?
So if Abdul, if you can go a little bit south. Yeah, so it's this, so it's the block on your right here from Gibson down to Arco. So that it's that stretch right there. And there's two rental buildings, a building that's been under construction for about 4 or 5 years, and then 2 single family homes, and then this other building faces Arco. So
and that all would be in the residential part?
Correct. Only from 8 to 4, Monday through Friday. Otherwise, it's not an issue.
Okay, and then but I'm saying, so where are you prohibited from parking from 8 to 5? Is that it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Where you see, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm familiar with the area because I used to, it's right behind Manchester, right? It's between Manchester and 40.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right, thank you. Alderwoman Peel, before you take that down, did you have a statement? Alderwoman Peel?
Yes, thank you. I had a question about the Tech Artista district. I didn't realize that was a part.
Alderwoman Peel?
It was muffled.
I think we lost her. Okay, Julie, you got something you can say while we wait for Alderwoman Peel to get back on? Our technology is not always perfect.
Yeah, I understand, and that happens to me too. I might say that there might be people, including Alderman Peel, who didn't realize that was a parking district because it's relatively new. The other thing I was just going to add is that, as you probably know, our neighborhood is the beneficiary and challenged by a great deal of development. And so as the residents on my street, where the district would go, in our conversations, people mentioned two main purposes behind the parking district. One was the parking district across the street, which we've just talked about, but also the fact that with all the development coming in the neighborhood, generally speaking, we anticipate parking will only become more challenging. There's a lot of density being added to the neighborhood. And as you probably know, parking is just always an issue, and it's not really going to get any better.
I am aware of WashU, I think, donated like around $10 million to your neighborhood back many years ago. I've been around long enough to remember that. So yeah, it's a benefit burden dilemma with anything that you do, from marriage, whatever. That $10 million is a great benefit for your neighborhood. But with increasing development, it becomes burdens. And I thought a lot of things that we went to, we started to require parking lots or off-street parking so that it wouldn't be so much of a burden to residential. But when you're doing them at the same time, I think sometimes that just becomes a conflict. Alderwoman Peel, you were speaking. I'm sorry, we lost you for a minute.
Thank you, Chairwoman Tyus. Abdul, I wanted to know if that residential parking district by the church, by Tech Artista, do they have hang tags? For whom? Because it used to be a nonprofit there.
So not a nonprofit there. If they're in the residential district and they can produce, that's a residential district. So whoever's in that district, which may also extend from Gibson, I believe. But if they can produce the documentation, then we're going to give them whatever it is that they request. I mean, so if they get 3 or 4 tags, you can produce the documentation that's associated with that, then we give whoever. So for us, it's just an administrative piece.
So in front of Tech Artista, that's a residential district, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so are there people living? I haven't seen any.
That I'm not sure.
You don't know. So
I'm not sure. No, ma'am.
So that means somebody will come to you with the documentation from that area. And Julie, you're not able to park, your side of the street is not able to park there, is that correct?
That's correct. We're not eligible for hang tags over there.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
So, Mr. Abdullah, I'm kind of confused. So if it's residential parking versus business parking, and you don't have any residents living in that building, how would they have documentation to park there? It's my question.
That if it's a resident, I have to go back to the list of this right here again. The only I've never been involved with a business district being established. The only one I do know that is where there's restricted parking is on Shoto, and that happened before I got here, and they made a deal with the community that, hey, we put residential on one side, we'll pay for your tags, and on the other side for this stretch, if we could get restricted parking. So they pay for that entire district's parking to have that stretch. And so that one, I'm not sure. I have to go back and check. So that I'm not sure. I know that that's a residential parking space. You
showed it on the map. Well, I mean, yes, you showed it there, right? So that's what I'm saying. So residential indicates to me, and what I would have passed from the board or voted for would be there are residents in that building. When it ceased to be a residential use, then to me, we need to take that back and revisit how we use that. And they should not be able to get preferred parking on that street if they're not using it as a residence. If it's artists that live there and they got mixed use, that's one thing. Okay, because I understand mixed use. But if it's not artists that actually live there, then I got a problem with that still being a residential district. And so this comes to my question, how, once we make something a district, Have you ever had to revoke it?
No, ma'am. I've never done that. People have asked that, and I tell them all the time, the same process that was used to establish it, we will assist you with revoking any district. So if you decide that you don't want it or you do want it, it doesn't matter to us. It's, hey, we're going to work with you to do the will that you want. But I don't think that since I've been here, I can only speak since I've been here the last 4 years, I've never worked with a community, with the community to revoke a district at all.
Well, what I'm saying in this case, so this community is here and they're on the same street, and now we're looking at something, let's just say there is no residence there. But we got this district that's excluding them from parking there. So of course, the people who are in the building are not gonna come and try to revoke it, okay? But so they really don't have to do that. All they have to do is approach their alderperson and prove that that's not residential. And then you come back and you can get rid of that the ordinance, and revoke the ordinance, and that takes that away, right?
Yes, ma'am, they can certainly do. Again, that's legislation. That's
not you. I understand. I'm just really surprised about what I heard. Yes, Alderwoman Peel.
I am in agreement with you, Chairwoman Tyus. I think this is something that needs to be investigated on how this happened and why it's still there. Previously to Tech Artista buying the building, it was actually a nonprofit that housed, it was a safe house, and it had residents there. So I don't know if this legislation was, when it was, and I know Julie, you've lived in the area for a long time. Did these parking signs go up after Tech Artista bought this, or was this when this was the nonprofit with the residents actually living in the church?
I just want to say, I'm going to answer you, and I'm assuming it's okay.
It is okay, because she's a member of the committee. But I appreciate the respect.
So I was just going to say that the nonprofit, I wish I had a timeline in front of me. I wish I had the years to attach to this, but I don't. But the nonprofit, which was there for a long time, moved out or went defunct. And the building was vacant for many years. And then Tech Artista moved in. So there was a period of time where the building was completely vacant. Now, I don't know who owned the building during that time. So that would be something I guess you could check records with. So I can't exactly answer your question, Alderman Peel, I'm sorry, but it was vacant for a long time. And if it's okay, I might just also add, as a resident who lived across the street, I have mixed feelings about the idea of possibly revoking that parking district, which may be a surprising thing to say, but the building was vacant for many years. And I would much prefer a building that was a flourishing business, even though it causes me some pain regarding parking, than have potentially having an empty building of that size again. The empty building was really, for us, a big safety concern. And so I would really like to see that building contain a business or residence or something versus being vacant. So just want to put that out there as well.
Okay, and that's really fair. As a legislator, though, I'm more concerned with that we are not being fair in what we are indicating something is. If that's, for me, if it's a residential parking, why is it a different residential parking across the street than right here? It's all the same, it's residential. If at some point you want to come back and make that a business, then you come back and apply for a business district. But the signage says residential parking already, okay? So that is concerning to me, because that's not quite honest. So I have some concerns with that. I also have some concerns with the street department putting up signage, so, and how they do that. So is there anyone else that, Alderman Boston, I see you have arrived. Did you have any questions?
Sorry about that. No, ma'am, not right this second this morning.
Okay. Anybody on the committee have any questions? Alderwoman Boyd.
I guess what I'm hearing is getting messy, because it's just, the waters are getting muddier and muddier. And so as what I'm thinking is we thought as the street committee, from what Alderman Bosley wanted to do, this was going to be a fantastic idea, and then we could just make everything happen. And so now we're running into a lot of the woods and seeing that it's not going to be that easy. And I was excited because I have some residents that are having these challenges, especially with the churches. And they have these big activities, and then they just disrespectful of people's parking in front of their properties. So, Madam Chair, I'm just trying to figure out how we're gonna wade through this, because that's what I'm thinking we're gonna be doing, wading through to make it easier for the citizens to be able to have the privacy to park in front of their home, and make sure that people aren't taking advantage of this whole process.
So I can tell you right now, this bill is still going to be held. I want the street department to come to and talk to me about them putting up signage, who pays the signage. It's also going to give us a chance to pull the ordinance that gave a different parking on one side of the street that we know as a business now parking, but when we look at the signage, it says residential parking. So I want to look at that ordinance. I want the street department to come and explain to me who pays for the signage and how that works. And sometimes this is what you do in committee. You wade through the murk, you wade through the weeds until you get some clarity. And so it's fair. A lot of times, and I will say the past alderman from the 17th ward, and I'm just going to speak very clearly and plainly, would do things that I would not think that he ethically should not have done. I mean, he wrote a letter of support for something in my ward and had it put in a file, and then it came up that it was Joe Rody. Joe Rody in no way represents or had ever represented or could ever be elected to represent any place in the first or what was previously the 20th ward. So I don't pass things along for the next person to deal with. We're going to deal with this now. We're going to find out how that actually works, and then try to make sure we have a game plan. If we're going to pass this or not, we're going to have a game plan of how we address this. Is it this really needed, or do we just really need to get rid of what's already there? So we're going to hold this board bill. We will be meeting again either Wednesday or Thursday of next week, and we'll have the streets department coming in addressing us. And then we will also have time to look into what actually is happening on that street. And I guess I'm also surprised that you got 2 different parking districts on the street. That's another thing. As I said, I remember when we started putting these things into effect, and it was always a residential thing because people had problems with, as Alderman from the 27th said, which a lot in North St. Louis is big churches come in. And I got in trouble early in my career about talking about those very things. And a lot of the people live in other communities, and they come in on whatever Sundays or whatever dates they have, and they park in front of people's houses. And I don't care if there's even, I know over in the 4th ward, there's a church that has 3 or 4 parking lots. And if you go down there on Sunday, all their lots are empty, but the people parked in front of other people's houses. So they absolutely do not respect the fact that they would not want us to come out in the county and do the same thing. And it's mostly people who live in the county that do that. And so I started to raise that issue back in the early 90s and had a big fight with the churches, which I won, about zoning and respecting the community. And if you drive down Kings Highway, most of our streets are closed off of Kings Highway in my area because we had big churches, and the people said, but I like to park on Mafford Place, never thinking that Sharon Ties would want to park in front of her own house. So that's the problem that we had in North St. Louis. But I do know in the Central Quarter, there were business problems from growth, which we all want growth and we want people to have businesses, but you also have to keep residents in the community. That's been our problem in our city. And I've been here for 30 years. And so I've watched our city's population do that. So we have to make sure that we make residents feel like that they are as valued as businesses. Even in this conversation about pandemics, oh, we got to get the business to start. Oh, for me, we got to keep our residents safe. So it is it's always weighing the benefits and burdens of everything. But we're going to take this to one more week and come back and have a meeting next week. And we're going to find out exactly what's going on. I'm going to drive over there now because I want to see it myself. And that's what I do when I'm not quite sure about how things are going. But what I saw, from Mr. Abdullah's screen sharing, it says, it doesn't say business, it says residential. So if it's residential, I don't understand why the people who live on that street can't park there. And I want to look at what the particular ordinance says. So we're just going to hold this over for another week and build on more testimony. We'll have the streets come in, okay? So we can find out. All right. Anybody else have any questions or concerns about this? Okay. And now we're going to go back to Board Bill 178. So I did get a chance to drive over and understand better, because I need to understand when I'm doing stuff and voting on it. I don't want to say, oops, I voted for the wrong thing. I went there. I talked to the people at Barnes, and so I'm comfortable with it now. And so Board Bill 178, Madam Clerk, if you just read that again, that's before us, and then we already had testimony. Unless anybody has some more testimony, we're going to take a vote.
Board Bill 178, introduced by Alderwoman Tina Peel, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service to vacate a portion of air rights above a portion of Newstead Avenue in the city of St. Louis, Missouri, as hereinafter described, and authorizing construction of a portion of a structure in the vacated area under certain terms and conditions.
Okay, Alderwoman from Peel, if you would just wrap up Board Bill 178, because we've already had testimony. I'm sorry. Is there anybody on the committee who has any questions about Board Bill 178, which we heard everybody testify last week? Is there anybody on the committee that has a question?
I'm good.
Anybody? Okay, Alderwoman Peel, if you would wrap up Board Bill 178. Alderwoman? Unmute. Alderwoman, you need to unmute. Thank you.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, I ask for your favorable consideration to pass this bill out with a do pass recommendation.
Okay. I'd entertain a motion that Board Bill 178 be passed out with a do pass recommendation.
Second. Second.
Okay, we can't do previous roll because Alderman Bosley is here. So Madam Clerk, if you would please call the roll.
Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro.
President, aye, I'm sorry. Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley.
Aye.
Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Peel.
Aye.
Chairwoman Tyus.
Aye.
6 aye votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion. Board Bill 178 is passed out with a do pass recommendation. Okay, so we'll be back here next week. And we're actually going to bring, for those who want to contact Alderman Vaccaro about being on this committee. For those who don't want to, the chair will then use her prerogative to put you on his committee, because we do want to talk about the collection of recycling fees. And I would ask you to go into the Google Docs and look at what we did in past years. Because when I left here in 2001, 2003, we didn't have fees. And when I came back sometime in, I don't know, when was that, 12, they had made the fees, what was it, $11. And then in 17, when Lyda Cruzen became the mayor, it went to $14. So both of those ordinances in the Google Docs, so you can look at that. And that's interesting to talk about, because when we passed the second ordinance, which went to 14, Alderman Conway was the primary sponsor, and they talked about that we were going to be doing, we were going to be collecting recycling fees, and that we would be able to pay for new dumpsters out of that, and so now we've suspended recycling, and so there is a question about even if we are if we're able to have those fees paid and people don't get the service they talked about, we have something called the Hancock Amendment, which if you are collecting fees for service, that's one thing, but if you increase a fee and it's not for service, you have to actually go to the voters. I'm going to have the Hancock Amendment also put in the Google Doc for you. And then Alderman Vaccaro is going to be handling that. And then I'm going to come back and start the nuisance properties investigation too. So I'm going to be working on that and getting all those documents. So on the agenda next week will be Board Bill 178, and we'll have the Streets Committee come before us, and we'll be able to have had a chance to look at the ordinance that currently allows for it says residential parking district, but it may be a business district. And then we will also look at both resolutions that start up on resolutions 177 and 199. Alderman Vaccaro will be calling separate meetings for that. So we'll get that all straight by next week. I want to.
Chairwoman Tyus.
Yes.
You said Board Bill 178.
I'm sorry, did I say the wrong one? 170.
We held 179. So
I thought I said 179. I'm sorry, 179.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then Alderman Vaccaro will be having separate meetings for 199, but I will come back here with 177. Okay. I want to thank all the people who came.
So on the agenda is Board Bill 179 and Resolution 177.
Correct. Because
Okay.
Alderman Vaccaro is going to call a separate subcommittee meeting about 199.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I want to thank everyone who came to testify. I appreciate it. Are there any other questions or concerns? I did learn a lot about parking districts. I think this is good. I don't think that you push things down and keep pushing them. You need to answer these questions. We need to have a fair process for everyone across the city. I really want to thank Park Central Development, Mr. Abdullah. You've done a fantastic job. And like I said, maybe we can get a contract for you to help us transition. And if we're gonna, if the Streets Department or the Street Committee or the Board of Aldermen is really looking to ask the Treasurer's Office to implement something that's across the board, Alderman Boyd is correct in that we can ask them to increase fees, but we can also be friendly and trying to assist to make sure they get the funds to get this kind of thing started up, because it is always a startup fee for things like that. And we want everybody who wants to be able to have one to be able to do it. And everybody doesn't have the resources of Mr. Abdullah and Park Central. Any other questions or concerns?
I do want to add one thing. It's not really germane to the parking district. I appreciate Brother Abdul being here. He's a heck of a mind, especially when it comes down to some of the things that we're trying to figure out. He's been doing a great job over there. But as far as the problem properties go, I did talk to some of our problem properties attorneys. So I just want the members of the committee to be mindful when we do bring information in next week on different blocks or areas that you may specifically want a response on, and why things have not been closed down or why they have not been put on a nuisance list. Make sure that your calls for service are right. When we come in next week, if you are talking about particular addresses, do the best that you can to get your residents and people in that area that are seeing things happening to call the police. You don't have to call 911, but if you call that non-emergency number and you star 67, they won't know that it's you. But at bare minimum, they start to get those calls for service on the record. Therefore, when we have that conversation, we can talk about the need for the buildings to be closed down that are actually on paper, opposed to what we physically see sometimes. So I think that is and has been some sort of a communication drift between different departments. As we always know, we're trying to figure that particular piece out. But after speaking to them, there's some things that I saw, particularly in my ward, and places that I know for sure should have like 100 calls for service for shooters, and they only had like one. So, with that being said, I just want other folks to just watch those particular things, and when we have that conversation with the next week, maybe have those blocks that you want particularly answers for. just make sure your residents are calling on them and there's enough calls for service. So just, that's it.
Thank you. I do want to back up because I did read the ordinance. It does not require 911. It does not require 231. So that's part of the problem. The people who are enforcing the ordinance, is supposed to be in charge of it. They're requiring a greater detail than required. We have Citizen Service Bureau, and oftentimes people call Citizen Service Bureau. The problem is sometimes you couldn't get 911 or whatever. So what I don't want them to do is to create an impediment for how people report, okay? And so particularly this lawyer, who I am a lawyer too. So when you come for me, make sure you come the correct way, because all of you all know I clap back, right?
That's
and
right.
I clap back by reading. So when you tell me that people have to call 911 or they got to do this, and it doesn't say that in the ordinance, that's something you made up, okay? And you're responsible for it. And so this particular person, I told her back in August, you don't really want to come this way with me, because I'm going to come back and I'm going to read everything, and everybody else except for her backed off and said, okay, and I'm going to work on this. But she wanted to make this hard when it could have been, I just ain't been doing my job. When we only get one piece of property closed in North St. Louis in 5 years, one by that person, one. But you go downtown where it is not part of your district, and you close a Black restaurant, and they need a Black face to close the Black restaurant, Rain. And so you closed a commercial area downtown, but you can't close none of these gas stations and none of these stores that's been going on 20 and 30 years. You ain't got to have people who report that. You got police reports. You know, there's been gunfire, shooting, murder, drugs. It doesn't require none of what this person said it does. And I asked her when we had this ongoing conversation on email, about a house where people were selling drugs that I personally went to see myself and sat there. And then she said, well, you didn't turn in the right, what did she say? You didn't turn that in correctly, and we don't have evidence. And I said, excuse me, you mean personal eyewitness testimony is no longer accepted? Now, my bar number is 36710, and I got my license in 1988. So it's way before her. I used to practice criminal law. Personal eyewitness testimony is accepted, and not only is it accepted, but when you go into, when I bring this in, you'll see that they refer to that as something that's being accepted. So to me, this person didn't want to do her job, has not done her job, and it's turned down a lot of people. And you make residents in the city feel like that they can't come and talk to us if you allow them to say, oh, that ain't right. I know Alderwoman Boyd has had experience with that. We're not supposed to be making it hard for the people who live in the community. The businesses and the people who are nuisances have to fit into our community. We don't have to let them come and make a nuisance of our community for 10, 15, 20 years, and nobody ever does anything. Then to me, we get rid of those people. You can't do anything. When the police chief tells me that a triple homicide that happened in the 4900 block of Cote Brilliant, and he says, Alderwoman, you've been dealing with that store on Hammett and Euclid for 20 years. Actually, I've been dealing with it for 25 years. The question becomes, why is it open? If you know that, you don't have to have all those calls. You do have police reports. And what I found out is that they take reports off after a year. Certain reports, if you don't get into any problems, they take the reports off of the year. So if you had 15 years of bad behavior or 1 year of you don't get in reports, so they just dismiss that. That's ridiculous. So that's the kind of thing we have to look at. I'm furious about it. We should not have any place across the city, north or south, where you've had these things going on for 10 and 15 years and they are still operating. So they're making up a requirement that's not there. And you don't get to make we do legislation. You get to follow our legislation, not make up your own. Okay, and that's what my concern is. Alderwoman Boyd.
Yeah, the only comment I want to make is Alderman Bosley, in defense of our residents, we read the nuisance ordinance, and it's a block in particular. They followed the guidelines of that ordinance. We met with the city council's office, and they sat there and told those residents they did it wrong. And I just was so embarrassed because they did everything that ordinance said. They even did 911 and CSB. Our neighborhood improvement specialist had to pull all the CSB calls and give it to the nuisance officer and say, here are the calls. And I said, but how are you telling people to call 911, which is not in the ordinance, but you can't get through 911? I said, so you tying their hands. I said, so they're making excuses to me not to do what they're supposed to do. And I'm very frustrated. I've been dealing with this for over 5 years, this nuisance thing. So no, they're not getting a pass. They need to do their jobs, and they need, if they're tired, retire. That's where I'm at. If you burned out, just retire and let somebody young come in there and do it. But we can't educate residents to follow the rules. And then when they follow the rules, then you tell the residents you did it wrong. I just think that's just humiliating to those. If you had just saw how beat up they look when that counselor said, you did it wrong. And that was it. Those residents felt beaten. So no, I'm not accepting that. I respect my residents. I think they know how to read and they can comprehend directions well. We need the results for when they follow the rules.
And I want to add, even if they don't, if they are making a report, let's just say they didn't call 911 or 231, but they call Citizen Service Bureau. There's a record there, okay? The whole point is they've been trying to participate. And so we have a bad reputation amongst the police and other people says, oh, well, the people in North St. Louis won't report. We all know that's not true at all, okay? They will report, they will tell things. So I don't want to make any impediments that keep people from, if they don't feel like they can tell 911 or 231 1212, they tell me. I've had to deal with a lot of police chiefs where they tell me and then I go and tell them. Now, one of the police chiefs, after they got used to the fact, well, Alderwoman, why did they tell you? Because they know me. I would get all the information and give it to them, including this current one right now. And that's good information, okay? I am an officer of the court. So it doesn't always go the way somebody, even how we wrote legislation. But if the people are trying to say this is a problem and we turn our head or we say, well, if you didn't do it right, that's why everybody is leaving the community. They can, okay? Because they're feeling frustrated, like they're not being heard. I'm sorry, Alderman Bosley, go ahead.
No, it's okay. No, I agree. Once again, I'm throwing out the information, ensuring that when I do have conversations and there's information that should be trickling back, we throw it out there, so we just we keep it pushing from there. But no, I appreciate it.
Okay. Anybody else having any concerns? And I do want to say this is not going to be a North St. Louis investigation. I did hear from several South St. Louis aldermen and alderwomen who said, hey, we have this problem too. I wrote it for North St. Louis because that's what I knew at the point, but there are other people who say they're having the same problem. So this will be a citywide investigation of what's going on. Any other concerns, comments? Okay, I move that we adjourn.
So move. Second, I'm sorry.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.